I've had some requests to look into Victoria Gold to see whether that might be a good buy today, because recently they experienced a failure at their heap leach pad at their producing Eagle mine in the Yukon. And by the way, nothing you see here is financial advice. You should always do lots of your own research before investing any money at all. And if you invest any money, continue doing a lot of research as long as you own that company. To start out, I want to say that fortunately, nobody was injured or killed in this accident. Now, SSR Mining had an accident like this earlier this year, and 9 people were killed. And as a matter of fact, they were covered by so much material that it took them a couple of months to find the bodies. So when things like this happen, it's really, really dangerous. And anyone who is downhill from a failure like this probably isn't going to make it. So it's a very, very good thing that nobody was hurt or killed in this. However, when it comes to investors, well, is that a different story? Let's look into it. I do think that this mine will come back into production eventually, because this mine is very, very important for the people of the Yukon, and there's a big problem with unemployment up there, and they depend on mining. So I think the government, I think the people will want this mine back into production. But will it be Victoria Gold that brings it back into production? Let's look at these numbers here and try to find out. By the way, I was not a shareholder of Victoria Gold, and this is not a deep dive into this because I didn't feel like I had to do a deep dive. After discovering what I discovered, I didn't feel like I had to dig any further to make a decision. You may remember that back in February, SSR Mining also had a heap leach pad failure, and that destroyed the stock price of SSR Mining. But their case was a bit different because they had $500 million in cash, no debt if I remember correctly, and they also had 2 other producing mines. Whereas with Victoria Gold, Eagle is their only producing mine, and they have $35 million in cash equivalents, and receivables, and then they have $166 million in inventory as well. However, almost all of this inventory, this $166 million, is the gold that sits on the heap leach pad. And with the heap leach failure, well, they probably lost all of that, or almost all of it. So I think we have to assume that they have no money in inventory right now. But this $35 million, this was as of the end of March. And in April, May, and most of June, we've had high gold prices. So they've probably added like another $20 million to this in the last few months. So let's call that $55 million in cash. But now we got to look at their debt. Their current liabilities, what they have to pay in the next 12 months, is $95.4 million. And they have to pay that with $55 million. And also, in addition to that, they have $142 million in long-term debt. So debt that's due outside of the next 12 months. So total amount of debt of $237.4 million with $55 million to pay it. And then it's worse because they also have the cleanup cost. Now right now, I don't think we know enough to make any sort of estimate of the cleanup cost, but let's say there's 10 million tons of material and it's going to cost $5 per ton to move that to a new spot, and then additional money to build a new place to contain all that stuff that's spilled. Well then, maybe we're looking at, I don't know, $60 million in cleanup costs. And it's also worth noting that this is a heap leach pad. So they put this gold containing ore onto the pad, and then they leach the gold out using chemicals like cyanide. So it's pretty likely that there's chemicals that spilled along with all this material when the heap leach pad collapsed. So there's probably going to be some type of fine involved as well. And I have no idea what those fines might be, but adding this $60 million to this $237 million, we're looking at about $300 million in liabilities plus fines with $55 million to pay everything. So where could they go from here? Well, this Eagle mine has the potential to be very, very profitable. So maybe they can get money from investors. But will they be able to get $300 million from investors to pay for all the liabilities, plus another $100 million or maybe $200 million to rebuild everything that was damaged? Maybe, but that would come with a heck of a lot of dilution if it's even possible. But I'm leaning towards no. No, it's not possible. I think right now the lenders are in the driver's seat, and the path forward is whatever the lenders want to do. They probably have the mine as collateral in case they don't get paid. So they can probably take the asset if they're not going to get paid. But that's not always what they want to do. That's not always the best course of action. In fact, they usually prefer not to do that and to work with the company if possible. I think there's a reason why the stock price fell 85%. And even after an 85% drop, just looking at the assets and liabilities and potential cleanup costs and potential fines, this isn't a story I would want to get involved in. And I just want to reiterate that this wasn't any kind of deep dive because I didn't feel like I needed to do a deep dive to know that Victoria has major problems on their hands and to know that they're not going to be able to pay back their debt. And even if you weren't a shareholder in Victoria, let something like this be a reminder to you about the importance of diversification. Even if you come across a company in a safe jurisdiction with good management, with a good mine, that's an incredible value, you think it's going to do great things for your portfolio, there's always a risk like this. Mining is a risky business. And when a company only has one producing asset, and when a company has a lot of debt, that is a lot of risk there. And if anything happens with the company, like a heap leach pad failure, for example, the company can go bankrupt. If you would like to get access to my very best research and know what I'm buying or selling with my own money, check out my newsletter. Click on this link right here. The price goes up on July 1st, so you only have a couple days left to lock in the current price.